My cousin's wife banned me from Christmas because I steal attention. I was too pretty at her wedding, too interesting after studying abroad, and apparently even existing near her baby is a threat. I, 22 female, have three cousins, Tony, 22 male, Hannah, 25 female, and Kylie, 26 female. I'm the youngest of the four of us. This story is mainly about Tony and his new wife, Janet, 20 female, and how it should have been a happy milestone slowly turned into something uncomfortable and honestly painful for me. Growing up, Tony and I were incredibly close. Even though we lived in different states and only saw each other a handful of times a year, he was the cousin I felt most connected to. Whenever we were together, it was like no time had passed. We joked around, shared inside jokes, and genuinely enjoyed each other's company. As we got older, though, things naturally shifted. Life happened, we grew into different people, and while we were still family, the closeness faded a bit. Tony had known Janet since they were kids, but they didn't start dating until he was 18 and she was 16. At the time, I didn't think much of it. When they got engaged, I was genuinely excited for him. He seemed happy, and I was happy for him. When I finally had the chance to meet Janet in person, she seemed very sweet, quiet, polite, and honestly a little shy. I had no reason to believe we wouldn't get along. Things started to feel strange around the time of their wedding. A few weeks before the wedding, I was thrifting with my Aunt Tony mom. I came across a jumpsuit that I absolutely loved. It had a white halter-style top and black and white striped pants. My original plan was to wear it to a completely different event I had coming up. I never intended for it to be a wedding outfit. My aunt, however, insisted that it would be perfect for Tony and Janet's wedding. I immediately felt hesitant. The top was white, and I'm very aware of the unspoken rule about not wearing white to someone else's wedding. I expressed that concern more than once. My aunt reassured me repeatedly, telling me that it wasn't bridal at all, and that I was overthinking it. She even said she would text Janet directly to ask if it was okay. She did, and Janet approved it. That felt like the final confirmation I needed. If the bride herself said it was fine, then I didn't see an issue. I trusted that it was genuinely okay. On the day of the wedding, I wore the jumpsuit. I'll be honest, I knew I looked nice. I felt confident and put together, but I didn't feel like I was competing with anyone. Janet looked absolutely stunning. There was no question who the bride was. She was glowing, radiant, and clearly the center of attention in her wedding dress. From my perspective, the wedding went beautifully. The ceremony was lovely, the reception was fun, and I was just enjoying being there with my family. I danced mostly with my cousin Hannah, and we had an amazing time. We laughed, danced, and genuinely lived in the moment without worrying about anything else going on around us. It wasn't until after the wedding that I found out there had been an issue. Apparently, Janet was upset about what I wore. According to her, I looked better than her. Hearing that honestly shocked me. That was never my intention, and it felt unfair given that she had approved the outfit beforehand. I had received a lot of compliments throughout the night, and yes, some of the groomsmen were curious about who I was. A few of them even asked for my number. I didn't flirt, I didn't encourage it, and I certainly didn't do anything inappropriate. I was there to celebrate my cousin's wedding, not steal attention. As the reception went on, I started to notice Janet looked increasingly overwhelmed. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, just small things. She seemed quieter, more withdrawn, smiling but not really present. While a group of people around us were busy talking and laughing, I gently pulled her aside where no one could hear us. I told her, calmly and privately, that if she needed to step away for a moment or take a breather, absolutely no one would mind. I meant it genuinely. Weddings are exhausting, especially when you're young, under pressure, and the center of attention all day. I wanted her to know it was okay to take care of herself. She assured me she was fine and said she'd step away if she needed to. I believed her, and I went back to enjoying the night with Hannah and the rest of our family. Only a few minutes later, seemingly out of nowhere, Janet burst into tears and ran to the back area where the wedding party had been getting ready earlier. It caught everyone off guard. I immediately told Tony, who was chatting with guests nearby, that Janet had run off and might need him. To his credit, he didn't make a scene. He quietly excused himself and went to check on her. At the time, I assumed she was just overwhelmed by the day. Weddings are emotional. I didn't think much more about it. The next day, I received a text from Tony that completely blindsided me. He told me that Janet had been upset because I had embarrassed her in front of everyone by suggesting she take a break. According to him, she felt like I had singled her out and implied she couldn't handle her own wedding. On top of that, he said the reason she had been overwhelmed in the first place was because I had taken all the attention away from her. I honestly didn't even know how to respond at first. I had no idea that anything I did was perceived that way. I spent most of the night dancing with Hannah and sticking close to our side of the family. I wasn't trying to be in the spotlight, wasn't giving speeches, wasn't inserting myself into anything. I was just there, having fun, being myself. It was only after that message that I realized what a spectacle I was apparently accused of causing. I felt confused and hurt. Janet had approved my outfit beforehand. I had gone out of my way to be respectful. I had even checked in on her privately, because I cared. And now, somehow, I was being painted as the reason her wedding day was tainted. I started replaying everything in my head, wondering if I had missed something. Maybe it's relevant that for most of my life, I was considered the ugly or awkward cousin. Growing up, I was shy, insecure, and never the one anyone paid attention to. It wasn't until college that I really came into my own. I didn't get cosmetic work done or drastically change my appearance. I just became happier, more confident, more outgoing. I learned how to enjoy myself, how to talk to people, how to exist comfortably in my own skin. Tony barely saw me during those years, and I didn't meet Janet until after they were engaged. It's entirely possible that the version of me she had in her head was based on old photos or old stories, the awkward cousin no one noticed. Maybe seeing a different version of me at her wedding caught her off guard. I don't know. What I do know is that I never intended to upstage her. I never wanted attention, and I certainly didn't want to cause her pain on what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. I apologized to Tony anyway. I told him I was sorry if I embarrassed Janet, and I even apologized for wearing the jumpsuit despite the fact that she had approved it. I wanted to keep the peace. I wanted to acknowledge her feelings, even if I didn't fully understand them. But deep down, I didn't feel like I had done anything to intentionally steal the spotlight. I also texted Janet directly and apologized. I told her I never meant to hurt her or make her feel overshadowed, and that I genuinely hoped she was okay. She never replied. That silence hurt more than I expected. I didn't feel like I had overdressed, especially since there were guests wearing outfits far more formal or flashy than mine. The dress code was nice church function, and I felt like I fit right in. Still, I was left with this lingering feeling of being blamed for something I never meant to do, something I wasn't even aware was happening. Fast forward to now, and I had just finished a foreign exchange program in Spain. It was genuinely one of the best experiences of my life. I felt alive there in a way I hadn't before. Independent, curious, stretched outside of my comfort zone. I loved the culture, the people, the pace of life, and the feeling that the world was bigger than the small bubble I grew up in. I would go back in a heartbeat if I could. That time abroad only solidified what I already knew about myself. After college, I want to work abroad, travel, and see as much of the world as I possibly can. While I was in Spain, a lot happened back home. Janet had graduated early from college with a 2-year business degree, and Tony finished engineering school. Not long after, they got pregnant and had their baby boy while I was still overseas. I was sad that I couldn't be there when he was born, but I was still incredibly excited. I asked for pictures, told everyone how happy I was for them, and genuinely looked forward to meeting him once I got back. Their life path looks very different from mine, and that's okay. I've never judged them for starting a family young. If anything, I respected that they knew what they wanted and went for it. I always made a conscious effort to show support, even when our lives clearly started moving in opposite directions. Tony used to travel cross-country all the time before his engagement to Janet. He loved being on the road, seeing new places, visiting friends. But after they got engaged, that all stopped. He stayed close to home, settled into routine. From what I know, Janet never really had an interest in leaving home beyond the occasional family vacation. She seemed content building a life where they were, and again, that's her choice. I never once made comments comparing our lives or implying one was better than the other. When I got back from Spain, I honestly thought things were fine. Not perfect, but fine. Enough time had passed since the wedding drama that I assumed it was water under the bridge. I was excited to see everyone for the holidays, especially since this would be their first Christmas in their new house and their first as parents. Tony and Janet decided they would host Christmas. The whole family was invited, my parents included. I was looking forward to it. I wanted to meet my baby cousin, catch up with everyone, and just be part of the family again. I thought this could be a fresh start, a reset. Instead, I received a private message. Not a group text. Not a family conversation. A private message telling me that I would not be invited to Christmas. The reason? My presence would take away from the family and from the new baby. I stared at my phone for a long time after reading it. I reread it over and over, trying to understand how simply existing in the same space could somehow overshadow a newborn child. I felt embarrassed, hurt, and honestly humiliated. It felt like confirmation of something I'd been quietly afraid of for a while, that Janet didn't just dislike something I did, but disliked me. I genuinely didn't understand any of it, so I asked Janet to explain. That's when she told me that this was her baby's first Christmas, and that me arriving home after a semester abroad in Spain would pull attention away from her son. She said people would naturally ask me how Spain was, where I traveled, what my plans were after college, where I wanted to go next, and that all of that would somehow overshadow her baby's first holiday. I was honestly stunned. I told her I would have absolutely no problem redirecting conversations. I said very clearly that if anyone asked about Spain, I could answer briefly or even say, "We can talk about that later, I want to hear about the baby," because that was the truth. I wasn't planning on standing in the middle of the living room giving a slideshow presentation about my travels. I just wanted to be with my family for Christmas. She told me that wasn't enough. She said this wasn't about conversation control, it was about me. According to her, I always take the spotlight, and for once in her life, she wanted people to celebrate something without me being there. Reading that felt like getting punched in the stomach. I couldn't understand how my mere presence had turned into such a problem. I wasn't announcing an engagement, a pregnancy, or some huge life milestone at Christmas. I was just coming home. When I asked where this was really coming from, she brought up the wedding. She said that situation proved that I make everything about myself, intentionally or not. That was when it finally clicked that this resentment had been festering for a long time. What hurt even more was her framing it as if I had somehow planned my life events to compete with hers. She mentioned that she was already pregnant when I announced I was going abroad, implying that I should have somehow toned my life down for her sake. But the facts didn't even line up. I announced my exchange program over a year ago. She wasn't pregnant then. The timeline simply didn't match reality, yet she was using it as proof that I was constantly stealing her moments. At that point, I didn't know what to do anymore, so I reached out to the family for advice. My parents were furious on my behalf. They couldn't believe that I was being excluded from Christmas, especially when my own parents were invited. My dad, in particular, was deeply hurt by the idea that his daughter was being singled out and told she was too much for a family holiday. On the other hand, Tony's parents and Janet's parents both told me I should respect her wishes. They said she had been struggling with the adjustment to motherhood, that she was overwhelmed, emotional, and that the baby should come first. The unspoken message was clear. It was easier for me to stay away than to upset her. In the end, a compromise was forced rather than chosen. My dad and I stayed behind, while my mom went to drop off presents. She even delivered the gift I had brought back from Spain, specifically for the baby. Sitting at home on Christmas while my family gathered without me was one of the loneliest feelings I've ever had. This situation has completely split my grandparents. They desperately want to keep the family together, but they're also being told that any stress placed on Janet could be harmful because she's a new mom and having a rough adjustment. I keep asking myself if I did something wrong. Am I really the a-hole for existing loudly? For living my life differently? For not dimming myself to make someone else feel more secure? I don't want this to tear my family apart, but I also don't know how to fix something when the problem seems to be me just being there.